I remember the exact moment my son looked at me with disgust, the way his eyes narrowed, scanning my worn cotton shirt and faded jeans like I was something he'd found stuck to the bottom of his Italian leather shoes. That look cut deeper than any knife could. "Dad, seriously, you're wearing that?" Carlos said, his voice dripping with contempt. I stood in the doorway of his luxury apartment, suddenly conscious of every thread on my body. The cotton shirt I'd worn for 7 years, the jeans with a barely noticeable patch on the knee, the scuffed work boots that had walked me through decades of honest labor. "What's wrong with what I'm wearing?" I asked, though I already knew. He rolled his eyes dramatically. "We're meeting my colleagues for dinner, important people, people who could advance my career, and you show up looking like the maintenance guy." His words hung in the air between us, sharp and painful. "Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from." I wasn't always invisible to my son. There was a time when Carlos looked at me with admiration, when my calloused hands represented strength instead of embarrassment. But that was before the expensive business school, before the designer suits, before he decided that worth was measured by price tags rather than character. My name is Paul Martinez. I'm 71 years old, and I've spent most of my life being underestimated. It started early, when I became an orphan at 12. My parents died within months of each other. My father from a workplace accident, my mother from what the doctors called pneumonia, but what I now recognize as a broken heart. With no relatives willing to take me in, I learned self-reliance before I learned algebra. My first job was delivering newspapers at dawn, racing through quiet neighborhoods while other kids were still wrapped in their dreams. By 16, I was working full shifts at a warehouse after school, loading trucks until my back ached and my hands blistered. My education came from necessity, not university hallways. I learned electrical work from Mr. Thompson, who let me apprentice on weekends, plumbing from old Jim Watkins, who paid me in knowledge rather than dollars, carpentry from books I checked out of the public library, studying diagrams by flashlight when I couldn't afford to keep the lights on. At 23, I met Eliza. Beautiful, kind-hearted Eliza, with her infectious laugh and practical mind. She worked as a nurse at the county hospital, tending to others with the same gentle determination that eventually won my heart. "You've got good hands," she told me on our third date, examining the calluses on my palms. "Hands that build things." We married 6 months later in a simple ceremony at the courthouse. No fancy reception, no honeymoon abroad, just two people promising to face life together for better or worse. Carlos came along 2 years later, followed by his sister Maria 3 years after that. Our home was modest, a small 2-bedroom house in a working-class neighborhood, but it was clean and safe and filled with love. We made do with what we had, teaching our children that character mattered more than possessions. "Why can't we have a bigger TV like Jimmy's family?" Carlos asked once when he was about 9. "Because we're saving for something more important," I told him, "your education." Every month, without fail, I deposited money into college funds for both children. Sometimes it was only $20, sometimes a bit more, but I never missed a month, not even when the roof leaked or the car broke down. Meanwhile, I worked, and worked, and worked some more. Started as a maintenance technician at a local manufacturing plant, taking every overtime shift available. Studied manuals at night to learn new skills. Volunteered for the jobs nobody else wanted. When the plant manager position opened up, I applied without expecting much. The other candidates had college degrees and connections. I had 15 years of practical experience and a reputation for solving problems. "Martinez," the regional director said during my interview, "you know every inch of this facility better than anyone. Why should I hire some outsider who'll spend 6 months just figuring out where the circuit breakers are?" I got the job. The salary doubled overnight, but our lifestyle didn't change much. We moved to a slightly better neighborhood, put a bit more into the college funds, and continued living below our means. "Why do you still drive that old truck?" Eliza asked once. "We could afford something newer." "This one still runs," I said simply, "and every dollar we don't spend is a dollar the kids can use later." When Carlos left for business school, his tuition fully covered by my years of saving, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. My son would have opportunities I never did. He would enter adulthood without the burden of starting from nothing. I didn't expect gratitude exactly, but I didn't expect what happened instead. Carlos changed at university. Each time he came home, he seemed more distant, more judgmental of our simple life. He brought expensive clothes and sophisticated opinions, started making comments about our outdated furniture, our basic car, my unfashionable clothes. "Dad, you could at least get some decent shirts," he said during one holiday visit. "You're a plant manager, not a janitor." "What's wrong with my shirts?" I asked. "They look cheap," he said, as if that explained everything. After graduation, Carlos took a job at Rivera Tech, a fast-growing company in the city. His starting salary was more than I'd made after 10 years as plant manager. He bought a luxury apartment, designer clothes, a sports car that cost more than our house. When he visited, which became increasingly rare, he seemed uncomfortable, like our home was a reminder of something he wanted to forget. He stopped bringing friends around, started making excuses about why we couldn't meet his colleagues. "It's just easier if we meet at restaurants," he'd say vaguely. I understood the unspoken truth. He was ashamed of us, of me. Then came the night that changed everything. Carlos called unexpectedly on a Thursday evening. "Dad, I need you to come to a company event tomorrow night. The CEO specifically asked about meeting my family." I was surprised but pleased. "Of course, what time?" 7 o'clock. It's at the Metropolitan Club." His voice turned cautious. "It's pretty formal. Could you maybe wear something nice, like a suit?" I owned exactly one suit, purchased for Eliza's funeral 5 years earlier. "I'll look presentable," I promised. The Metropolitan Club occupied the top floor of the city's tallest building. I felt out of place the moment I stepped into the elevator, surrounded by young professionals in tailored suits and elegant dresses. My own suit, while clean and pressed, was obviously dated. Carlos was waiting near the entrance, scanning the arriving guests. When he spotted me, his expression shifted from anticipation to horror. "Dad," I said, formal. "That suit must be a decade old." "It's the only one I have," I said quietly. I thought it would be sufficient. He closed his eyes briefly, as if gathering patience. "Just try not to talk too much about the plant, okay? These are important people." Throughout the evening, Carlos kept me at arm's length, introducing me vaguely as my father without mentioning my name or occupation. He steered conversations away from personal topics, focusing instead on impressing a distinguished older gentleman who seemed to be receiving special attention from everyone. "That's Mr. Rivera himself," Carlos whispered, "the founder and CEO. He almost never comes to these events." I observed the man with interest. Despite being clearly wealthy, there was something unpretentious about him. His suit, while well-made, wasn't flashy. He listened more than he spoke, laughed easily, treated the waitstaff with the same respect he showed the executives. As the evening progressed, I found myself standing alone near the bar while Carlos networked eagerly across the room. The CEO approached, ordered a simple club soda, then turned to me with a friendly smile. "Enjoying the event?" he asked. "It's very impressive," I said honestly. "Sometimes too impressive," he replied with a wink. "All this," he gestured around the room, "can make people forget what really matters." We fell into easy conversation. I found myself telling him about my journey from orphan teenager to plant manager, about raising 2 children as a widower, about the satisfaction of building something lasting. "What brought you to Rivera Tech tonight?" he asked eventually. "My son works here," I explained. "Carlos Martinez. He's in marketing." Something flickered across the man's face. Recognition, perhaps surprise. "Carlos is your son?" Before I could respond, Carlos himself appeared at my elbow, slightly breathless. "Mr. Rivera, I see you've met my father." His voice carried a nervous edge. "Indeed I have," the CEO replied, studying Carlos with new interest. "We've been having a fascinating conversation." Carlos laughed artificially. "I hope he hasn't been boring you with stories about his factory job." I felt the sting of his dismissal, but said nothing. Mr. Rivera's expression hardened slightly. "Actually, your father was sharing some very insightful perspectives on business and life. You should be proud of him." "Oh, of course," Carlos backpedaled quickly. "Dad's very practical." The way he said practical, like it was a polite substitute for simple, made my chest tight. "Carlos," Mr. Rivera said suddenly, "would you mind giving us a moment? I'd like to continue my conversation with your father privately." Carlos looked confused but nodded quickly. "Of course, sir. Take all the time you need." Once we were alone again, the CEO's demeanor changed subtly. "Mr. Martinez, I don't normally do this, but I'm going to share something with you. I founded Rivera Tech 30 years ago with nothing but an idea and a loan from someone who believed in me. That person saw something in me that others missed. They invested not just money, but trust." He paused, looking thoughtful. "I've been searching for someone with similar qualities to help lead our expansion efforts. Someone with practical experience, integrity, and perspective. Someone who understands that value isn't always visible on the surface." I listened, unsure where this was heading. "Would you be interested in joining our executive team as operations director? The position requires exactly your kind of experience and character." The offer was so unexpected that I almost laughed. "Mr. Rivera, I'm 71 years old. Most companies are pushing people my age toward retirement, not hiring them for executive positions." "Age means experience," he replied simply. "And from what I've observed tonight, you have exactly the kind of experience we need." I thought about it. My current job was stable but unchallenging. The plant practically ran itself these days, and there was something appealing about this new opportunity, this chance to prove that my practical knowledge had value. "I'd be honored," I said finally. Mr. Rivera smiled. "Excellent. Let's keep this between us for now. I'll have HR contact you Monday to formalize everything." He extended his hand. "Welcome to Rivera Tech, Mr. Martinez." The next morning, I received a call from Carlos. His voice sounded strange, higher pitched than usual, with an undercurrent of panic. "Dad, did Mr. Rivera offer you a job last night?" "How did you know that?" I asked, surprised. "It's all over the office. They're saying he's bringing in some experienced manufacturing executive to oversee the new production facilities." His voice turned suspicious. "What exactly did you tell him?" "The truth," I said simply. "About my experience, my approach to management, my philosophy about treating people with respect regardless of their position." There was a long silence before Carlos spoke again, his voice smaller now. "Dad, the position he's offering you, it's senior to mine. You'd be my boss." The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of Carlos looking down on my factory job, I would now outrank him at his own company. "I'm sure we can maintain appropriate professional boundaries," I said, perhaps a bit more coolly than necessary. Another pause. "I need to tell you something," Carlos said finally. "When I applied for this job, I may have exaggerated some things about our family background." "What things?" "I told them you were a retired business executive, that you had owned several successful companies, that our family had connections." The admission hit me like a physical blow. My son had been so ashamed of my honest work that he'd created a fictional father. "Why would you do that?" I asked quietly. "Because I wanted to fit in, because everyone here comes from money and influence." His voice cracked slightly. "Because I was tired of being the scholarship kid, the one who didn't belong." I thought about all the extra shifts I'd worked to pay for his education, all the simple pleasures Eliza and I had foregone to secure his future. All the times I'd worn patched clothes so he could have new ones. "Carlos," I said finally, "I've never been ashamed of who I am or what I do. I've worked honestly for everything I have. If that embarrasses you, that's your burden to carry, not mine." "So you're taking the job?" he asked. "Yes," I said firmly, "I'm taking the job." Monday morning arrived with a mixture of nervousness and determination. I wore my one suit again, knowing I would need to invest in better clothing for this new position. The Rivera Tech headquarters was intimidating, all glass and steel and important people hurrying purposefully. At reception, I gave my name and waited to be escorted upstairs. Several young employees passed by, giving me curious glances. I wondered if they were trying to figure out what someone like me was doing in their sleek, modern workspace. The HR director met me personally, leading me through a series of introductions and paperwork. By lunchtime, I had an office, an assistant, and a company email address. It felt surreal, like I had stepped into someone else's life. Around 2 o'clock, Mr. Rivera himself appeared at my door. "Getting settled in?" he asked warmly. "Yes, thank you. Everyone has been very helpful." He smiled. "Good. I've scheduled a department meeting for 4 o'clock. It's time to introduce you to your team." No, my team. The concept was still sinking in. "Including Carlos?" I asked carefully. "Especially Carlos," Mr. Rivera replied with an unreadable expression. The conference room was packed by 4. Curious faces studied me as I took a seat near the front. Carlos sat across the table, avoiding eye contact. He looked like he hadn't slept well. Mr. Rivera called the meeting to order with a brief tap on his water glass. "Thank you all for coming. I've gathered you here to introduce our new operations director, who will be overseeing our expansion into manufacturing." He gestured toward me. "Some of you may already know Paul Martinez. What you might not know is that Paul brings over 40 years of hands-on experience in manufacturing operations." I saw Carlos shift uncomfortably in his seat. Paul started as a maintenance technician and worked his way up to plant manager through determination, problem-solving, and treating people with respect. Mr. Rivera continued, "These are precisely the qualities I want leading our new division." He turned to me. "Paul, would you like to say a few words?" Standing before this group of young, educated professionals, I felt momentarily out of place. Then I remembered all the challenges I'd overcome, all the problems I'd solved, all the knowledge I'd earned through decades of practical experience. "Thank you, Mr. Rivera. I'm honored to join Rivera Tech. While I may not have the formal education that many of you do, I bring something different to the table: practical knowledge. I've built systems from the ground up. I've managed teams through crises. I've learned that the most valuable asset in any organization is its people, from the CEO to the person who empties the trash cans." I paused, making brief eye contact with my son. "I believe in judging people by their character, not their appearance or background. I believe in respecting everyone's contribution, regardless of their title, and I believe that humility is the foundation of true leadership." The room was quiet when I finished. Then Mr. Rivera began to applaud, and others joined in. Carlos remained still, his expression unreadable. After the meeting, he approached me hesitantly. "Can we talk? Privately?" We found an empty office down the hall. Carlos closed the door behind us, then stood awkwardly, as if unsure where to begin. "Dad, he started, then stopped. Tried again. "I don't know what to say." "You could start with the truth," I suggested, "about why you've been ashamed of me all these years." He flinched visibly. "I wasn't ashamed exactly. You literally invented a different father rather than admit what I actually do for a living." I know. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "It was wrong. But you don't understand what it's like in this world. Image matters, connections matter, background matters. Character matters more," I said firmly. "Something your mother and I tried to teach you." At the mention of Eliza, Carlos's eyes filled unexpectedly. "Mom would be so disappointed in me right now." She would, I agreed, not softening the blow, but she would also forgive you, because that's who she was. He looked down at his expensive shoes. And you? Can you forgive me? I considered the question carefully. Part of me wanted to make him work for it, to feel the full weight of his actions. But another part, the part that remembered him as a little boy who looked at me with admiration, just wanted my son back. I can forgive you, I said finally. But things need to change between us. No more pretending, no more shame about where you come from. He nodded, relief visible on his face. I promise. And congratulations on the job. You deserve it. Thank you, I said, then unable to resist, though I might need some fashion advice for my new position. Apparently my clothes aren't up to corporate standards. Carlos had the grace to look embarrassed. I'm sorry about that too. Your clothes were never the problem, my attitude was. In the weeks that followed, our relationship slowly repaired itself. Carlos introduced me properly to his colleagues, invited me to his apartment for dinner, asked for my advice on work projects, started visiting my modest home again without obvious discomfort, and I adapted to my new role, bringing decades of practical knowledge to a company that had plenty of theory but limited hands-on experience. My team quickly learned to respect my judgment, even if I didn't use the latest business jargon or wear the most expensive suits. 6 months into my new position, Mr. Rivera called me into his office for what he described as a performance review. I entered with some apprehension, uncertain what to expect. "Paul," he said warmly, gesturing for me to sit, "I want to thank you for taking this position. Your division's productivity is up 30% since you joined us." "I appreciate that," I said, "but the credit belongs to the team. They just needed someone to listen to their ideas." He smiled. "That's exactly why I hired you. Too many executives want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to find the smart solutions, regardless of who suggests them." He pushed a folder across his desk. "I'm promoting you to Senior Vice President of Operations, effective immediately. This comes with a substantial increase in compensation and equity in the company." I stared at the numbers in the folder, momentarily speechless. The salary alone was more money than I'd ever imagined earning. The stock options represented potential wealth beyond anything I'd ever dreamed possible. "This is very generous," I managed finally. "It's well-deserved," Mr. Rivera replied. "Now I hope you don't mind, but I've invited someone to join our conversation." The door opened and Carlos entered, looking nervous but pleased. "Carlos has something he'd like to share with you," Mr. Rivera explained, nodding encouragingly at my son. Carlos cleared his throat. "Dad, I've been working on a special project for the past few months, a scholarship program for students from working-class backgrounds who want to pursue careers in technology." He handed me a brochure. On the cover was a simple title, "The Paul and Eliza Martinez Opportunity Fund." "The company is providing initial funding," Carlos continued, "but I'm contributing a significant portion of my own salary as well. I want to help kids who come from backgrounds like yours, kids who have the potential, but not the resources." For the second time that day, I found myself at a loss for words. The gesture represented more than money. It showed understanding, respect, and a reconnection with the values Eliza and I had tried to instill. "Your mother would be proud," I said finally, my voice thick with emotion, "of both of us." That evening, as I drove home to my modest house in my practical car, wearing my ordinary clothes, I felt a profound sense of satisfaction, not because of the promotion or the money, but because my son had finally seen me, truly seen me, for who I was. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from orphan child to warehouse worker, to plant manager to corporate executive, from father to stranger to colleague to father again, from being judged by appearances to being valued for substance. The next morning, Carlos picked me up for work, something that had become our new routine. As I climbed into his luxury car, he glanced at my clothes, the same style of simple shirt and practical pants I'd always worn. "You know, Dad," he said with a smile. You could afford nicer clothes now. I could, I agreed, fastening my seatbelt. But these remind me of who I really am. He nodded thoughtfully, understanding at last that true value lies beneath the surface, that character outweighs appearance, that substance matters more than style. Besides, I added with a wink, someone once told me that image matters in the corporate world. Maybe my image is the experienced executive who doesn't need fancy clothes to prove his worth. Carlos laughed, a genuine laugh, free from embarrassment or pretense. Touché, Dad, touché. And if you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Where were you listening from, and did this story resonate with you? To hear the next story, just click on the box on the screen. Thank you so much for listening.